All right, looks like we are live. Welcome to Hands-on Theory Thursdays. This is my new series. I'm going to be doing several of these series on different days of the week. And Thursdays is going to be hands-on music theory. So before I start talking more, I'm going to play a little bit. I'm going to get into a little bit of hands-on theory. And then I'm going to talk about what I was doing and how you can do it too. Theory is kind of a scary word for a lot of people, or a word that does not reflect many people I know don't feel that theory reflects their feelings about music. So we're going to be reframing that a little bit today to look into how we can think about music theory in various ways, and we're not really going to be taking a traditional approach, as it were. We're going to be taking pieces of things here and there, and at the heart of our approach to understanding music theory, at least for our purposes in this series, is going to be, how do you understand patterns that exist in music, and how do you yourself, in your way of seeing, experiencing, hearing, visualizing, understanding those patterns, how do you utilize those patterns to create your own music? So that's a brief introduction, and my live stream dialogue just changed. Yeah, it looks like it's definitely live, and I think somebody's watching. So welcome. Oh yeah, and if you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Jonathan Chapman Cook. This is JCC Piano Studio. Welcome. If you are here and you're not subscribed, be sure to do that if you'd like more content like this. And yeah, hope you enjoy the lesson today. So I'm just going to play a little bit. All right, so what I just did was I improvised something. So although that's comprised of sounds that are familiar to probably anybody watching this, the unique timing and placement of notes of that was original. It was unique. It was created in this moment, for this moment, without a strong knowledge of what was going to be coming next, using a number of building blocks. So what were those building blocks? This is something we're going to be talking about today, not in all of our hands-on theory live streams, because I think this is a over talked about topic in music theory, actually, which is chords. But today we are going to be using chords because they are very useful. And I'll be talking more about why I think that the music theory culture we exist in is way disproportionately focused on the notion of chords and chord progressions, and you gotta learn all your chords. It's useful. It's very useful to know chords and understand them, especially if there's a specific style of music you want to learn to play, which is very chord-based heavy. But we're going to be taking a more open approach, a more personal approach here. So in any case, by the way, I have a chat box here, and I haven't done this before. So let me make sure it's up on my screen. I want to make sure. Jordan's here. Welcome, Jordan. I'm actually going to interact with the live chat in this series. So I'm going to try to get better at that. And since I'm talking so much, if you guys are tuning in, it'd be great to get some questions or comments, whatever you want to contribute to the conversation. Okay, so what are chords? There are a number of ways to define them. I'm going to go with a pretty basic definition of a chord, which is a chord is a set of 3 or more notes combined, either played at the same time, like this. This is a C major chord comprised of the notes C, E, and G. And there I just did the second way of approaching chords, which is what's called broken chords, where you play one note at a time. Now, we have those 3 notes, C, E, and G, and they are in a stack of notes that are very close together, just one white key between each note. However, if I look at that pattern, here's our C. Any one of these notes on the keyboard that has the same pattern right below the group of 2 black keys is also a C. And there's your E. You can find any E on the piano and any G on the piano by locating that place in the pattern of white and black keys. And we can combine any number of C, E, and G, and that's a C major chord. So I could do C here, G, or let's do C, E, G. So I could do the C here, the E here, and the G here. It's a wonderful sound. This is sometimes called an open voice chord, but I want to steer away from too many definitions today. And I'll talk more about why I want to steer away from definitions shortly. For now, definitions are really just a linguistic tool to facilitate common understanding. I find definitions are the kind of scary thing in music theory, or the domineering thing in music theory for a lot of people, that there's all this right and wrong, and it can really kind of kill creativity when discussing music, to get too many words mixed into something which is wordlessly, it's beyond. I mean, there's a lot of music with words, but music has a beauty to it that's beyond words. It exists in a dimension that the tongue cannot articulate. And we want to preserve that sense of wonder, of the beauty of music. It's the source of what attracted so many of us to music. Different for some people. Some people are drawn into music because of the meaning of words, and the kind of the tones and harmonies and melodies are sort of a backdrop to that more poetic or literary, meaningful, or narrative layer of music with text. So that over-defining, basically, I'm stumbling over this thought a little bit, but it's something that is very difficult to articulate because the sense of it is something we can't articulate. This is something I lost touch with when I was in music school as a college music performance and composition major. Everything was analyzed, and it was like the best way I could put it. I went out to the woods every day when I was in college because it was just such a great getaway to go to a place that just was, and I could see the change in the leaves every day and get to know watch the family of swans on the lake and kind of see things play out in nature according to their own systems over time. And there was such a innate, there was an aspect of nature which is just so innately beautiful. that as much as scientists and biologists can know and understand without idealizing nature, there is this ineffable beauty. And I believe that that ineffable beauty of music and nature is not invalid just because we can't positivistically analyze it. I think it's a different process. It's more of a psychological process, understanding the ineffable experience that we carry within us. So that's going pretty deep into a kind of philosophical dimension, but I think it's worth spending my time talking about that today because it conveys to you all the underpinnings of why I'm doing a theory class as part of my regular live stream series, and why I think it's so important not to throw out music theory just because it's taught maybe traditionally, or the what was kind of widespread mainstream of teaching music theory leads a lot of people to feel that it's a bit cut and dry, and it's kind of like understanding an animal by shooting and killing it and then dissecting it. You know, that animal is no longer alive. And analyzing a piece of music, if not paired with a kind of reverence for the ineffable beauty of it, is to take the life out of it. Whereas I believe in an approach to music theory that allows this music to have its lifeblood, have its ever shape-shifting manifestations of meaning in all the lives of all the people who hear it. You know, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony theoretically exists on paper, but it only sonically exists in the moment that it's performed, and every single one of those performances is unique and new in the moment, and so none is quite like any other. And so in that sense, there's a side of a piece like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, you know, we all know that one, extraordinarily powerful piece of music, man. I encourage you to listen to the whole thing if you never have, all four movements, start to finish. Do it. Make the time. It's one of the greatest works of art. I mean, it's just outstanding. But don't take my word for it. Listen to your own truth as you listen. So, what am I trying to get to here? Yes, the life of a piece of music is something that cannot be pinned down. You can't pin down music. It's if you try to pin down music, it's just going to escape from your grasp, and you'll be left with all your dry trappings of analysis and theory, and your soul will wither. And it's just the most sad thing to see people who have invested their lives in music all dried up and talking about music in this purely critical way. This does not connect to the source of why we fell in love with music. It's a false path. And so many people's reaction is, I don't want to learn music theory because I want music to still have that feeling, right? So I always tell my students, well, hear me out on this. You can learn music theory and have it still have magic and feeling. So more and more I'm attempting to teach music theory intuitively through the discovery of the individual rather than using theoretical tools. Now, many of my students like assignments, and they like the reward process, and that's incredibly useful for me as a teacher because I can build a kind of curriculum over time and then find the right launching point once they have those traditional theoretical tools for them to launch into, say, improvisation using some of the chords they've learned, and then they start this process of discovery, and that's a wonderful thing. Other people don't like to think about it at all and just uncover patterns. They're recognizing the patterns and analyzing them in a either visual way or ear-based way, or a physical feeling kind of way. That's an element of how you can discover patterns, not only patterns in the piano, but patterns in your body as you play, patterns in your own emotional or imaginative response to music. Those are all valid ways to explore and uncover the patterns of music in your life. They're there. So if there's something there that's compelling, I think we should follow that path. We'll be talking more about that. But today, I'm going to be talking about chords, and I'm going to be talking about chords and not analyzing them. So let's get into the music here. So I'm not really going to analyze the chords so much more, except that what I did in the beginning, I'll just say I was using different combinations of broken chords, using these notes and where they fall in any pattern on the piano. And then this chord. Somebody in the live stream can shout out if they know what chord this is. It's not a test. I don't care if you know. You can look at the pattern and then study it. This can be challenging, so whatever pattern you find yourself being able to hold on to, that's the thing to play with if you want to be able to replicate it. This chord, these are all white key chords. And you know, maybe as a cool intro part for anyone watching this who hasn't really done this before, you could try doing an improvisation, meaning get your hands dirty in some of these chords. And every one, as a pattern to start with, could be a stack of white keys with one white key in between the three notes. If you haven't studied traditional piano lessons and this hand shape just feels really awkward, other piano teachers will cringe to hear me say this, but just use whatever fingers and whatever hand shape is comfortable for you to be able to play that chord the easiest. We're not talking about developing classical piano technique here. So you could use two hands to build it that way. And see if you can play those same sets of notes on the same patterns and around the keyboard. Might take a little while at first. It's an open canvas for you, and this is the paintbrush you're using, that shape of notes. That's kind of an intro way to play with chords. Now, what you might do next with that same shape is play the same three notes but do one at a time. You could repeat one note at a time, or you could jump around. play something outside of the chord, don't judge yourself. Just listen to what the sound is that happens. Let's say you accidentally hit that instead of saying, oh, I'm doing it wrong, listen. Oh, there's a new pattern. I've heard that sound before and I like it. Yeah. Okay, what are those three notes? A, B, and E. And again, I'm really going to be taking apart the pieces of every conceptual underpinning of the systematized music as it's commonly known. Note names only matter for communication and for your own understanding. So it's a system of organizing the pitches of the slices of the frequency spectrum being outlined by the 12 tones of the piano by labeling them with note names. However, and this is something that translates over into sight reading as well, it really doesn't matter if you know the names of the notes or not, so long as you know what the patterns are in a way that works for you. I've taught many children who have composed their own songs, and I'll say, how does your song go? And they'll maybe play, something like that, and I say, wow, that is amazing. And then we do some other stuff, and 10 minutes later, maybe this is in a first piano lesson before we've gotten into note names, and I'll ask them to play the same song, and they'll go to the same note. And I said, I might say, how do you start in the same place? And they'll say something like, well, I'm looking at, so there's the 2 right here, and I know that it's the 1 above or to the right of the 2. And different people think about patterns in different ways. Someone who has always had a propensity to automatically and immediately understand right and left, or very quickly grasp that this side of the piano is what we call high notes, and this side of the piano is what we call low notes, that if we say go up on the piano, well, what does that mean? Are we supposed to lift the piano up? Like, what are we talking about up? It means this way. That's really confusing for a lot of people, and trying to say this is the note above the group of 2 black keys doesn't really compute for the way some people think. There's a spectrum of what I think, I'm not an expert on this at all. So when I speak of something like what I was going to say, which is dyslexia, I think that we deserve to afford ourselves a very flexible and open-minded understanding of understanding and perception of direction, and of metaphorical direction, such as this being up and this being down. Eventually, in music education, you want everybody to understand that, so we can communicate using our common language of tools. But if you want to learn a pattern on the piano, I would advise against denying your natural way of thinking about things. If you have if a teacher says up, but in your mind you think, I don't know why, but for me, I'm thinking down with that. And many teachers, inexperienced and experienced, would just say, well, no, that way's up and that way's down. A more considerate conversation might be required to work with you to shift your perspective. But in the meantime, hey, just think of it as down. When your teacher says up, just think down. And when it's like, oh, then our teachers got it backwards. Um, work with how it works for you. Some people also see these patterns as equivalent. So the E and the C, there's no differentiation between them. And I find that to be very compelling for students with what is diagnosed, I guess, and spoken of as full-blown dyslexia. Um, Among other elements, there being a lack of differentiation between left and right in the perception. And there's other ways of thinking about, like, well, it's this one. It's this note. And just thinking about that. I've worked with several dyslexic students, and both cultivated their ability to think about things their own way and also helped them to master understanding left and right. Piano lessons is... Libby! I also was improv, so there's no rules. But it's good to play the same progression on top of the bottom. Is it good to play the same progression on the top and bottom hands, like F, A, D, or just mix it up? I did play a D minor chord in there, in fact. Thank you for commenting, contributing. Yeah, what I'm talking about with improv, you can really explore. Remember being a kid on a playground and kind of running around and trying all the different things. So you could mix up those notes in any which way you wanted, combining them in different ways. And if you stumble or play something that you didn't intend to play, listen. Don't judge. Listen. Notice that was a different pattern. Or if you're really focused on getting the pattern that you're attempting to do, just let it go and keep moving forward. So, want to keep that healthy mentality. It's just you and the piano, so there's no one judging except for yourself if that happens. And if it does happen, that's okay too. We all do that. So, okay, so I've done a lot of talking today, and I am probably going to recommend in the future that people go back and watch the replay of this one to be able to kind of understand where I'm coming from with the way I'm talking about theory in this series. Because it's different than theory is talked about in a lot of contexts. And some of this may have been a bit seeming to be a bit overwrought or overthought. I do tend to think a lot in a way that may to some people feel like overthinking. For me, it helps to understand, understanding intellectual tools to be able to get to the result. And it's funny because I feel responsible to explain these things, and this whole time I've just been wanting to really dig my hands in. So we're going to do that for about 5 more minutes today, and I'm really going to get into playing. So I'm going to share a tool that's one of my new favorite things to do, both myself and with students. And I'm going to switch screens here. So we're looking at a page called musictheory.net. There's also a an iPhone app called Tenuto. I highly recommend this for anyone studying music of the Western notated sort of traditional variety, because boy, it really helps with these tools. Just to clear the air on all of my all of my ideas that are like, may seem like let's throw out the traditional ideas. I do not believe that. And I do not believe that there's anything wrong with the traditional methods of understanding. I just think that there's room for more paths to be developed that are not all positivistic in a... I remember when I used to read like yoga authors, they talk a lot about this east-west dichotomy of thinking, which I think is more of a metaphor than going back a long time. And again, I'm not an expert in this, but like this Eastern philosophy idea. Well, there's lots of awful people have committed horrible atrocities through like all kinds of awful systems in the East as well as the West. And there's extremely enlightened people in the East and in the West. And a lot of the same ideas appear in different manifestations in both hemispheres. But, you know, for the sake of metaphor, East being a more intuitive, spiritual path, and West being more analytical, industrialism, science, etc. This system of music theory did develop in the West, and so if you're studying Western music theory, I absolutely encourage you to do so avidly and passionately, and to find ways to make it fun for yourself, because it really helps to get these tools under your belt. But we're actually going to undermine one of the tools here. So on musictheory.net, we're going to, under the staff identification, actually, no, we're going to go down to keyboard identification and keyboard chord identification. Livy, I don't know if we've done this in one of your lessons. I know I did this with Jordan at one point. So down here, there's all these chord types. I'm going to show you how to set this up. We're going to start simple and get more complex. So the idea of this test on musictheory.net is to identify the correct form of the chord. I'm going to show you a different way to do it. That's just going to be fun to play with. So, and I have looked up random chord generators. I have not found one that I like as much as this one. Cool, good demo. I'm seeing your comment now, Livy. Thanks. So I like this just to get what I still have on the screen here, these notes in red. So I'll show you how to set this up when you're at Music Theory before I dig into it. So up in the top right, there's this gear. We're going to open that up, and we're going to, I'm just going to go straight ahead and do all of these crazy chords. I'll even include the augmented seventh and augmented major seventh, dominant seventh. Let's just do all of them. So what you can do, and as it pertains to what we're talking about now, you don't have to learn what these terms mean. We're just going to get it to generate different kinds of chords, and we're going to use it to play with the notes that it shows us. However, you might want to test yourself on these, and this is it's a great tool for that as well. But let's just highlight all of them for now. As you experiment with this, you could do just a couple of them, try different ones, combine different ones, see which ones lead to harmonies that you like playing with, and maybe some of them don't strike your fancy as much. But now we're going to do all of them. All right, here we go. So I'm just going to find the notes of this chord, and I'm going to play around with them a little bit. It's just this, this is a kind of chord that sounds kind of a little bit demonic in a way. I'm going to bring a little bit more of my keyboard. It's cut off a little. Okay, so what do you do after you've played with a chord a little bit? If you know the name of it, you can pick it. But what I'm going to do and encourage you to do is not care about your score at the top. We're just going to start clicking them until it turns green. Oh, and hey, oh, that was a diminished triad. You might notice that if that is helpful or interesting to you, but you don't have to. So, okay, what do we have here? So now what I'm doing is a very experienced application and skilled application of using those four notes, D sharp, F sharp, A, and C. But if you're new to this, you might just use two. So I'll do a demonstration of something that would be a bit easier to play if you're just starting out with this. Got the pedal down, just creating a mood. Boy, there's such rich moods in these harmonies. That's I don't know. What do you feel when you hear that chord? Maybe if you want to comment on it, feel free to. Oh, and Livy, we haven't done this yet. Well, now we don't have to do this in your lesson because you can just do it on your own. How about that? Free piano lessons. Woo! This is just so much fun. I love getting on the live streams and just kind of openly sharing this. All right, so thanks for still being here if you're around. And let's see, I need to work out my screen situation here. I had that live chat on this screen. It kept disappearing when I was doing stuff. Okay, so let's find out what that is. Set random things. Oh, okay. I hit it really fast. That was a diminished seventh chord. Doesn't matter. What's the next chord? Now what happens if I go to the other chord? And by the way, I am aware that I said I was going to do a simpler application with that last chord. I'll do that with this one. Oh, I did do that with the last one. That's right. What's it sound like low? We're in the mud. My childhood, my first piano teacher, I took a song to him that went like this. And there's a section in the climax that did something like this. What was it? And I loved the sound of these rich chords. So Livy's asking, we know it was a diminished seventh chord, but how do we know which one? Use the bass note as the guide? Yes, you can absolutely do that. And that's actually a great question because there's another setting in here where you can either... Now, I have inversions turned on. I would actually, if you're just doing this for the first time, I'd encourage you to turn inversions off so that if you're, and this is if you're combining this free play exercise with a desire to identify and learn so as to be able to patternize your understanding of these chords. I would, in that case, not recommend having inversions on because it's going to give you different sort of twisted forms of the chord that will make it more difficult for you to identify what the root is. If you're just doing this for totally non-standardly analytical free play, I would recommend turning inversions on because you're going to get more variety of different versions of chords. All right, so what do we have? Oh, I was telling a story. Yeah, I loved that sound, and I know that my teacher was absolutely well-intentioned and educated and teaching me a good lesson. But he said, you can't do the chords down there. You can't do closed voice chords down there. And he was a good teacher and really bolstered my self-esteem in many ways. So definitely many, many more pros than cons. And I imagine maybe some point he'll watch this, or hey, maybe he's watching this right now. But I remember that differentiation between this is a rule as opposed to, hey, by the way, a lot of musicians think that's a muddy sound. And so if you wanted to say, play this for kind of an audience that you want that to be more accessible to, you might consider a different voicing of the chord that doesn't have all the notes crunched down in the low section, because a lot of people, maybe most people, myself included, think it sounds too muddy. We don't like that sound. That would be a sort of fair way to describe it, because it still leaves open the option that, hey, maybe because I love that sound and I chose it for that reason, that I know what I'm doing in my own way. And that's not something that fits with the rules, but it's something that fits with what I like, and that is just so important. So many young people's experiences of music get sort of invalidated by that kind of those kinds of phrasings of teachings. Tools, not rules. Everything we teach traditionally, it's a tool. There are no rules. There are no rules in music. They do not exist. There are mutually agreed upon tools for the creation and communication of musical pieces, ideas. So that's a very freeing concept. We're just learning tools to build what we want. All right, this is a nice one. Ooh, if you have a keyboard, you can play with different sounds. I want to do vibes on this one. Doing just one chord at a time, it's cool. You get a little sound world to play with for each one. But it can be sort of limiting. So maybe I'll go back to the previous chord and see what they sound like in a progression. So by that I mean I'm going to play one chord and then the other chord. Ooh. I used to have a Magic School Bus tape where they went into outer space. And with the vibes, I just think of when they get lost between, I think, Jupiter and Saturn. I listened to that thing over and over. That was my favorite part, when they're like, we are floating in outer space. We don't know how far. We're 1 million miles from Jupiter and 2 million miles from Saturn and 8 million miles from Earth, and we're just here in the peaceful, timeless void. So there we are. This live stream is much longer than I anticipated because the underpinnings, the introduction to the series kind of took a while, and now I'm really getting into what I wanted to do. So at this point, I'm going to sort of transfer over to me just playing with this for as long as I feel like. So you're welcome to hang out, stay along for the ride. I think I'll do electric piano 2 on my keyboard, which is sort of imitative, I think, of Fender Rhodes. I think the first EP on here, of course, because it's a Yamaha piano, is imitative of the sound of one of those old Yamaha electric pianos. I like the second ones, like a little more like a Fender Rhodes. So here's my chord. So I'm going to remember that. Is that right? So interesting. Yeah, you see those two notes crunched together, and then these, and then when you do the inversions, there's these 3 notes in a row in this chord. This is what's called breaking the chord and kind of arpeggiating it. Alright, that's safely programmed in my mind. I'm not even going to think about what chord that is. I know I could figure it out. Yeah, it was an augmented 7th. Cool. Ooh, okay. Yeah, okay. I can do something with this. So we got, I'll say what it is. We got our C7, C major 7 here. This is really interesting for me. Never would have stumbled on this chord progression, I don't think. I'm gonna do piano because that's just a little more like the vibes than I realized it was gonna be. I want to get a little crunchy with this. I'm playing around. It's fun to do this. Kind of want to add a little sound effect to this. Add a little echo. Let's see. If anybody has any questions as I go. Okay, let's see here. Oh, loud. All right. All right. Cool. Well, this has been fun. I'm going to wrap up. I guess what I'm experiencing in doing this, I'm discovering this neat sequence of chords. I guess last piece of advice, if you do something like this or find sounds at the piano that you like the sounds of in combination with each other, just see if you can remember what those patterns are, and come back to them. That's the music theory mind that we want to cultivate. Not only recognition of patterns in short-term memory, but really getting to know them in a long-term sort of way so that you can come back to them, play with them, and you can draw these things from any source, be it a song you've learned in your piano lessons, or that somebody taught you. What are the notes that this song uses? What if I recombine them in a way? That's when you sort of start getting your hands on how the music is constructed by breaking it apart and then putting the pieces together in new ways. So I hope this has been fun and enjoyable for all of you who have tuned in and maybe watch the live stream or the replay later. I hope you guys have a really great rest of your day, and I wish you great joy and fun and self-love when you're exploring your instrument. And yeah, it's good stuff. That's the point I'll end on. Music, it's good stuff. All right, you guys, take care, and I'll